With the Vatican and Communist China nearing an agreement on the appointment of bishops, retired Hong Kong Cardinal Joseph Zen is again speaking out. According to a Facebook posted by Zen, the Vatican is ready to surrender to the Chinese Communist Party. The cardinal was responding to comments made by Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who said, "The Holy See has always maintained a pastoral approach, trying to overcome the contrasts and making itself available for a respectful and constructive dialogue with the civil authorities." Cardinal Parolin cited Pope Benedict XVI's 2007 letter to Chinese Catholics in making his argument. According to Parolin, Pope Benedict rejected any solution that involved, quote, "an ongoing conflict with the legitimate civil authorities." Cardinal Zen accused Parolin of taking Benedict XVI out of context. In that letter, Pope Benedict went on to say that, quote, "compliance with those authorities is not acceptable when they interfere unduly in matters regarding the faith and discipline of the Church," end quote. Also this week, Cardinal Parolin asserted that Vatican leaders know the sufferings of the Chinese brothers and sisters. Cardinal Zen did not take that well. He had a response asking, quote, "But does this man of little faith know what true suffering is? The brothers and sisters of the Chinese mainland are not afraid of being reduced to poverty, of being put in prison, or shedding their blood. Their greatest suffering is to see themselves betrayed by family." And you've been reading a great deal about the relationship, and we have been reporting about the relationship between China and the Vatican in recent weeks. Well, this week, Bishop Marcelo Sanchez Sorando, the Chancellor of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, said in an interview with the Spanish-language edition of the Vatican Insider that, quote, "Right now, those who are best implementing the social doctrine of the Church are the Chinese." Sorando's praise of China comes on the heels of reports that the Vatican is asking China's Catholic bishops who face persecution and imprisonment to step aside so that bishops from the Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association, a fake-run church by the communists, can take their place. Meanwhile, China's English-language paper announced that the Vatican deal was inevitable, praising the accord for allowing what is essentially co-governance of the Catholic Church with Communist China. We'll continue to pursue this story for you. And the president of the Bishops' Conference of Germany, a member of the Pope's Council of Cardinals, has declared that Catholic priests should bless the unions of homosexual couples. During an interview on German radio, Cardinal Reinhard Marx said, "The decision to bless a homosexual union ought to be made on a case-by-case basis by a priest or pastoral worker on the ground." The Cardinal did not say how such blessings would be carried out publicly or liturgically. And the court battle over the remains of Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen continues. A New York appeals court this week overturned a 2016 ruling ordering Sheen's body to be moved from St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York to Peoria, Illinois. The court instead ordered a hearing to determine where the late Archbishop himself wished to be buried. The court will re-examine an affidavit by former Sheen secretary, Monsignor Hilary Franco. The affidavit reportedly states Fulton Sheen's wish to be buried in New York. In fact, I can save them a lot of time. It was Sheen's niece who gave the Archdiocese permission to inter him at St. Patrick's and not at a priest's cemetery, as is stated in his will. The Sheen family is now pushing for the remains to be moved to Sheen's home diocese of Peoria so that his cause for canonization can continue. The cause, begun in Peoria, is currently stalled until Sheen's final resting place can be decided. The Archdiocese of New York is asking Peoria to resume Sheen's cause. Archdiocesan spokesman Joe Zwilling says the Vatican has informed them that there is no requirement that the earthly body of the candidate for sainthood reside in a particular place. For the time being, at least, Archbishop Sheen's remains are in limbo. And Blessed Pope Paul VI is one step closer to sainthood. On Tuesday, the Congregation for the Causes of Saints unanimously recognized a second miracle due to his intercession. If approved by Pope Francis, Paul VI could be canonized later this year. Appropriate, since this year marks the 50th anniversary of the release of his historic encyclical, Humanae Vitae. The second miracle attributed to Paul VI is the healing of an unborn Italian child in the 5th month of pregnancy. In 2014, the mother had an illness that risked her own life and that of her child. She was advised to have an abortion. Instead, she sought the intercession of Paul VI, and the baby girl was born in good health. Here with more on Humanae Vitae and to share his pastoral letter, The Splendor of Love, I'm joined by the Archbishop of Denver, Colorado, Samuel Aquila. Your Excellency, thank you for being here. This year marks the 50th anniversary of this landmark document by Blessed Pope Paul VI. Why did you decide it was time to write a pastoral letter? You call Humanae Vitae a gift and a light in the darkness. Why do you say that, and why do you think it's so challenged today?
I think that one of the reasons that I wrote the pastoral letter is, first of all, it is the 50th anniversary, and seeing the tremendous impact that Humanae Vitae has had on the lives of couples that I have worked with, both in the Diocese of Fargo and in the Archdiocese of Denver now. And I really wanted to communicate that message to the faithful, to my brother bishops, and to let them know the truth, the goodness, and the beauty of the teaching of Blessed Paul VI. I think that too often today we have been hesitant to proclaim that teaching and to really help couples come to see the goodness of the human sexual act. And especially in light of marriage, it's especially true with the objectification of women, the throwing away of women and the treatment of women that we see, especially in the whole Hollywood scene in the last several months. Yeah. And we need to affirm that teaching and hand it on.
Let's talk for a moment about that teaching. In your pastoral letter, you write, sex itself has been changed from a gift and source of life in the family to a means of pleasure and self-satisfaction. Once sex in marriage has been redefined and trivialized in this way, it is possible to change the definition and makeup of marriage or anything related to sexuality. Do you think Catholics today truly understand the teaching of Humanae Vitae? And how do you make it new to them? How do you make it contemporaneously relevant again?
People just are not taught, Catholics are not taught by their bishops or by their priests or by their religious educators or others about the truth of human sexuality. And we have really let society do the formation and not us. And one of the things that I think with the teachings of St. John Paul II on the human body and the understanding of the theology of the body is that we need to hand that teaching on. So have we really taken the responsibility to hand on the gift of this teaching, and always with charity, always with accompaniment, and with the couples, and especially the couples who do the NFP planning and work with NFP and help couples with that, they are tremendous witnesses, and they can do it far better than any priest or bishop can do it. Yeah, and so they understand the teaching, they speak from their lived experience, and so we have to let them run with the ball.
Yeah, no, it's important for the bishop, I think, and the priest to pass along the doctrinal support, the theological background, but to have the laity advocate for it from, as you said, their lived experience. It does make an enormous difference, because the fact is, if you're living consistently with this, you are more in tune with your spouse and just closer to them in every manner. I mean, it does bring even the most intimate part of your marriage. You're fully engaged. In December, Archbishop, a new Academy for Life member at the Vatican, the Pontifical Academy of Life, Father Chiodi is his name, argued in a lecture at the Gregorian entitled Rereading Humanae Vitae in Light of Amoris Laetitia, that responsible parenthood can obligate a married couple to use artificial contraception. Now, he based his argument on Pope Francis's Amoris Laetitia, and I'll put up the quote, and I want your reaction to this. He said, when natural methods are impossible or unfeasible, other forms of responsibility need to be found. In such circumstances, an artificial method for regulation of births could be recognized as an act of responsibility that is carried out not in order to radically reject the gift of a child, but because in those circumstances, responsibility calls the couple and the family to other forms of welcome and hospitality. What do you make of that argument?
I find that argument difficult, and I find it wrong-headed in terms of that it does not take into consideration the truly intimate act of sexual intimacy and the responsibility that is there. When you speak with couples who use natural family planning and who practice it, they speak to how freeing it is and how much more in communication they are with one another. And to change a teaching based on an exception is not good because it opens wide the floodgates to people saying, well, I can be responsible this way, or I can be responsible that way, or this teaching, you know, I really don't have to look at. So it just reinforces the individualistic approach in society.
Yeah, and you know, also the end of that argument that, you know, they different situations of responsibility call the couple and the family to other forms of welcome and hospitality, not to the life, never to a new child, but other forms of welcome and hospitality. Let me move on to something. There's a lot of reportage coming from Rome that there is a group formally studying Humanae Vitae in light of the 50th anniversary. And around the edges, you hear some disturbing things. Archbishop Paglia, the head of the Pontifical Academy of Life, said that perhaps it's time to reappraise what the teaching is. And from many areas in the Vatican, we're hearing this concern that perhaps it's time to revisit Humanae Vitae and the way procreation and the marital act has been imparted in the past. Does that concern you at all?
It certainly is a concern for me. And my question to them would be, have you really spoken with couples who have lived and experienced natural family planning? And have you opened yourselves to really speaking with those who have lived the theology of the body of John Paul II? And what are you basing your desire for reevaluating the teaching or changing the teaching? And also that it does not fit in with the consistent teaching of the Church for the last 2,000 years, and we need to really speak to the truth and really look at the experience of other Christian communities that have changed their teaching and are people filling their churches. And all of us know the answer to that. No, they are not. And when you look at the couples who are really living and practicing natural family planning and living out Humanae Vitae, they're the ones who are in our churches and who are really faithful. I give the story in my pastoral letter of Scott and Kimberly Hahn. And you look at the impact that it had on Kimberly's life, especially the study of Humanae Vitae, it brought her into the church.
When you mentioned Kimberly Hahn, it just brought to mind that lived experience is so powerful. And if you really cared for women, teaching it would be mandatory, because it does require a caring on the part of a man to be very attentive to what nature is bringing forward, and it does bring you closer together as a couple. I've seen it in our own lives, in friends' lives, and it is a healing thing, and in many ways a freeing thing, which is not what the culture is teaching at all.
Right. Well, and because the focus in society and in the culture is really on oneself and the satisfaction of one's pleasure. It is not on the other and what is the good for the other, and nor does it really look at the relationship with the other and seeing the other. I always go back to Scripture and to when Jesus is given the question on divorce, he goes back to the beginning and he says, what was it in the beginning? And we have to remember that in the very beginning of creation with Adam and Eve, that the blessing of fertility and the blessing of children is a blessing, and it is given by God to man and woman and bestowed to them as a gift. And that's all before the fall. So the Lord even intended prior to the fall that man and woman would come together in the sexual act and procreate and see that as a blessing.
Yeah.
And he looked upon it and said, it's very good. And do we communicate that to our people and help them to see the true dignity that is inherent in both a woman and a man?
Yeah.
And so society has that all distorted today.
No, if you truly love somebody, you don't want them to be, shot up with estrogen, and you certainly don't want anything between you. Nature is always the better way. And I think in the culture, when we hear about eating healthy, eating naturally, people want to take care of their bodies in a natural way. Well, this is the ultimate caring of the body and your relationships as nature intended. So I think that is the clearest argument for this, and I think Humanae Vitae contains that, and it's so rarely situated in that way. Your pastoral letter, Splendor of Love, is available on the Archdiocese of Denver's website, archden.org. Archbishop Samuel Aquila, thank you so much for being here.